All right. Okay. So after such an introduction, I'm gonna have to be as entertaining as the team in Orange. So that's a challenge. So as much as I live in San Francisco and I flew from there for this event, I'm a French guy. So happy to talk to anyone after in version originale if you want to for the contingent that's coming from here. Anyway, very excited to be here and talk about something that's dear to me. Which is why you should, as entrepreneurs, as people who are thinking about making a jump in your career, of doing it now, right? And I put fill the blank because we have different audiences in the room, right? We have developers, we have admins, obviously, but we also have, we try to invite like some founders, some folks who are working for startups, or who might have on the side an entrepreneurial project. So my mission today is to try to inspire you. Of course, I'll infuse some Salesforce stuff, but I want to try to inspire you on why it's the best time right now to consider doing something. Whether it could be a side occupation or something that could become your career choice and your full-time occupation. So with that, I'm very excited to have this opportunity here. Thanks to the team here. You know, you put together this great event. I mean, talking about French touch. Look at this room, like it's nice, right? And so I'm, of course, the trailblazers, everything that we're doing in San Francisco. Sometimes it's like it's not real. We see that at Dreamforce every year, but every time I go to those dreaming events, like it's so cool to see like this community leading the charge and organizing such a quality event. So again, thanks for that. And thanks to Jean-Michel, the rest of the team, Laura, etc., for organizing it. So because I'm the first of the day, I have the pleasure always to go through that slide that a lot of you know. So I will say it one more time. Don't make purchase decision based on any sort of forward-looking statement I would make during this presentation. That said, I add a little twist to it. I try to use the same font a tiny bit, but you can actually make a real decision based on what I'm about to say. That I encourage, and hopefully we'll have some interesting conversation. Again, I'm here all day, so happy to do that. So just to introduce myself very quickly, I said mandatory. I don't know if it's mandatory, but I've been working in a lot of companies here in France, and then I moved to the US in 2008. I used to run the startup program at Microsoft. I've been in this space for a while. I used to work for a company called Startup Weekend. How many of you did a Startup Weekend before? A few? There's always someone, like 2, 3? Okay, it could be more. So I highly encourage that. That's a great non-profit organization that's operating everywhere in the world, and specifically in France. That ended up joining the Textiles family. Anyway, I skipped the details. And 3.5 years ago, I joined Salesforce to build basically our outreach to the Salesforce ecosystem, to the startup ecosystem, to basically tell the Salesforce story. And so that's kind of in the spirit of this presentation today. And more recently, we launched the incubator program in San Francisco that some of you might have heard about. So with that, here's my agenda, very quickly. The startup revolution, why now, what it is. For founders, for those of you in the room who are already doing something and who consider yourself as founders, I have a few tips for you to share. But that said, specifically for admin and developers, what did I learn over the last 3 years about the opportunity that you have in front of you and why building an app, building a business could be a great timing now. You have an unfair advantage. So again, that's where I infuse the Salesforce story a little bit. And I will just finish with a few examples and best practices so that you can get started. So there is a lot. We're going to try to go quickly and clearly. So the startup revolution, who has heard about it? Who read, one day I was at the Charles de Gaulle airport, there was L'Expansion, L'Essentiel du Management, all those French magazines, they all had a cover that was basically talking about this. So it sounds like it's happening, right, if the press is talking about it. So just to give you an idea, who has heard about Station F? Station F. All right, so it's kind of a big deal in France, but more than France, Europe, and even in the US and Silicon Valley, we hear about it. This massive campus is going to bring a lot of attention to France. It's going to basically create some density about the ecosystem. That's just happening. Techstars, which is the most prestigious accelerator in the world, they just opened their local chapter here in Paris. I actually visited them yesterday, and they just announced a list of companies yesterday. So all that stuff is happening. We have news every day talking about that startup revolution and the fact that there is new thing going on. So I'm just going to try to give you my perspective on why it's happening now. First of all, access to technology. Once upon a time, you used to have to go to Silicon Valley to get some servers to get it going. Obviously, I'm talking to a cloud room here. It's not the case anymore. Look at this slide. You might have seen it before. Like, we provide all those capabilities to anyone in the world. So you can create really your company from anywhere in the world. It's gone out days where you need to be in one of the tier 1 tech hubs in the world to actually start your company. So access to technology, it's obvious, that's the cloud. Multiple channel, the App Store, the Apple App Store, the App Exchange, of course, and Salesforce gives you the ability to sell worldwide from day one. So, of course, we take it for granted, but just realize that, right? You can build your company here and sell anywhere in the world, and Salesforce, of course, can help you do that with the App Exchange. The global startup community, so it's this very grassroots community that share the same common language around the world, talks the same lingo, the same vocabulary. They share best practices. So again, you can get access to all that knowledge, those blogs, those information to actually be an effective founder, not to repeat all the mistakes that your peers and the previous founders have done. So I think this community is very tight. There's a lot of places in Paris, all over Europe, where you can actually meet those players. You know, Numa, Station F, of course, is going to be an example. And so that's happening, and that's really encouraging. That's really awesome. And anything you can do to represent Salesforce there and to show the love and like this community, this trailblazer attitude, of course, is much appreciated. Support from large companies. I'm a living proof of this. I used to do that at Microsoft, now at Salesforce. Most of the tech companies, of course, have a developer and startup programs or something of that nature. But even better, all the corporates, like if you look at, Vivatech, for instance, in France, that happened back in June, all the largest brands basically have a presence and engage with startup. There's really this willingness to engage with startup. Access to capital. Crowdfunding, right? You probably have heard about it. So all the way from like small projects like Kickstarter, etc. It's happening. You can find capital much more easily. You cannot complain anymore that there's no venture capital, no angel investing, no this and that in France, in Europe, or anywhere else. You can actually build a business and get access to capital fairly easily now. There's many, many ways to do that. And that's new. That has happened basically in the last 5 years. And I like this one particularly. It's like the exciting career choice. I remember going to Singapore like a few years back where there was no way, you could actually take risk and become an entrepreneur. I went back with Salesforce actually a couple of years ago. It totally changed. Now it's actually a role model. People actually strive to be entrepreneurs to build companies. So I think you can translate that in Europe as well, in some countries. I mean, the risk-taking and everything we're hearing in the press. So anyway, another factor to say, it's actually something, when I graduated myself, I think, very few of my peers actually decided to launch a company. It was not kind of an obvious choice. It is today. It's almost fashionable to be a startup CEO now. So just embrace it. Some people might criticize that, but I think it's a good thing. So all those factors, for me, are the things that made that startup revolution basically happen. So that's my general statement. Just being optimistic. It's never been easier than today, right, to create something. And that's hopefully, something that you share and that will maybe create some sort of bug or question mark in your head. That said, the problem, it's easier for everybody. So that's the other side of the coin. It's very competitive because you by design have hardly, half a dozen other companies who do something similar to you. And so how do you differentiate? How are you different? Of course, part of my answer would be, hey, you all have in this room something in common. You have an unfair advantage. You know the Salesforce world, you know the Salesforce ecosystem platform, etc., so you can leverage that. But more generally, outside of your case, how do you differentiate? So there's a saying that I like a lot, which is, vision without execution is just hallucination. That works in French, vision sans exécution. C'est de l'hallucination. Je suis très bon en traduction. So anyway, so apparently Thomas Edison said that first, but a lot of people use it now, so check online if you want to double check my source. But the point is and I honestly believe that this is an asset we could have in Europe, is actually have a little bit less, focus on the fundraising and all that fancy aspect of the startups, really focus on the execution. Really focus on engaging with customers, and you see the Salesforce narrative here, be a customer-driven company, focus on the customers. And so I highly encourage you in that revolution, really to think hard about how you could actually focus on execution versus just all that fancy phenomenon that you read in the press. At the end of the day, it's still about the execution, and so and just to be conscious that it might be easy, you have a lot of competition now. So specifically for those of you who are founders or about to be founders, or you think you have something going on, just a few things. First of all, there's a famous venture capitalist, Mark Andreessen, who said software is eating the world. You probably have heard about it. But the big companies understood that. Large corporations are not lagging behind. They are not stop thinking like startups are innovative and big companies are not. They're big dinosaurs and all that stuff. It's not true. They got it, they have smart people, and they're moving fast. And so startups just need to embrace it, right? If you're startup founders, you don't want to look at the big guys like, okay, that's not the world I want to live in. You need to embrace that. The good thing is, on the other side, corporation got it. I said that earlier. They all have startup programs, ways to engage. This stat says 68%. I think it might be more in Europe, in France in particular, based on my experience at Vivatech. Like, it sounds like most of the CAC 40 companies had some sort of startup engagement program. So that means they're ready. By the way, if you're not a founder or a startup person and you work for a corporation, if it's not the case, challenge your organization. Make sure there is an interface with that world so that you can, engage with them and bring some new technologies into your company. So if you're a founder, just a few tips. In my opinion, you need to define what you want to get, right? Because a lot of time, it's always about the simple things we want to sell to. It's hard sometimes to get there. So of course you can sell to those customers. That's a way to get cash and get dollars. But try to have them, get maybe another relationship that could translate into being a customer, like buying from, having them become a customers, or maybe getting an investment, a strategic investment. All those things apply. It could be about legitimacy. When I work at Startup Weekend, we signed a big deal with Google for Entrepreneurs, which was a big legitimizer for the brand, for our presence globally. So just think about those intangible assets as well. Don't think about end customers only as a cash cow, as a source of cash. And last but not least, distribution. So you might not get actual cash from your customers the way you engage them as a founder, but you might get access to customers. You might get access to a channel. Of course, again, the App Exchange is a very good example of it, where it's going to be harder for a startup to sell to us, sell to our IT department, but you can of course leverage the App Exchange. A few tips as well based on personal experience. Pick an ecosystem early, right? Make sure you actually align yourself with one of the big guys. It could be Salesforce, it could be Google, it could be Amazon, it could pick something, but make it early so that you get that traction, I guess in terms of tech ecosystem. So hopefully I'm not gonna be in trouble with anyone here, but beware of innovation teams who sometimes don't have budget. You can waste a lot of time as a founder. Make sure you're demanding. You might be a small company. Get them to get some skin in the game. Establish some milestones that you're supposed to hit together. Because as much as there's this revolution, it's also very easy to waste your time with the wrong team. And define a partnership in a way where if it falls apart, you can still run your company, right? It's good to have a dependence. It's good to play into an ecosystem, but make sure you're independent from this as well. And last but not least, which is sometimes a hard decision to make, pull the plug if it doesn't work, right? So it sounds obvious, but really it's a good checklist that I use a lot, and we have discussions at the incubator with companies who are in the middle of establishing strategic partnerships, things like, that could make or break their company. Just going through that list usually is helpful. All right, let's move on. If you're not yet a founder, not yet in startups, or not in a situation where you represent a corporation that could work with startups, you're an admin and a developer. So first of all, I really like this slide. So you might see this slide at Dreamforce. This is actually a Salesforce slide, but this is data from Gartner. And that's very encouraging. 55% of large enterprises, I'm not reading. Basically, there is demand for cloud apps. I was actually talking in San Francisco with a large French retailer 2 weeks ago. And the CTO/CIO has basically a mandate to rebuild the entire information system in the cloud, independent of the choices that are made anywhere else in the world. What a cool job, right? So he can basically look at all those aspects and challenge the existing technologies that they're using in the headquarters just to address the US market. So that's a big opportunity for startups, for admin, for developers to basically help, provide the right things. Look at all those areas, like of course marketing, sales, service, a company with a blue logo that does a lot there, but look at all those industries. Pick your poison, check your industry. I'm not gonna have you raise your hand, but I'm sure you probably fit in all those buckets, so make sure you think about those industry specific. As you know, the platform is very easy to create workflows and things like this, so just think about it this way. This is very encouraging, there is demand. A proof of that is the growth of the App Exchange. So you might have seen slides like this. We're on a mission to get to that 10 million installed. That's the growth of the App Exchange since it got launched in 2006. And so you recognize some logos, some actually partners and sponsors today. We double down on the App Exchange, and this growth is just a testimonial of the demand on the customer side that could actually legitimize the previous slide from the governor. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So what you have in common is this ecosystem. You're here. You're connected with us. You're trailblazers, etc., etc. So what's your unfair advantage in this story? First of all, and I just want to put that in the context of my presentation, right? Access to customers is key. A lot of the technology ecosystem that you can align you to, whatever the names, the one I mentioned earlier, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, etc. You don't necessarily have access to customers. You don't have necessarily that by design access to customers. You don't necessarily have this unique platform that customers trust, and you don't necessarily have all that ecosystem of partners that you can work with. Many of the application partners work together to basically build common offerings. There's a project called Project Unites, between DocuSign and a few other companies, where partners in our ecosystem went together. So it would be a great story that some, French Touch Dreamin companies would work together to go to market. So think about that. We have a new App Exchange program. I won't go into details. We have a session later today to talk about this, but we've been working hard on refining the program, if you heard about it, and the process to actually get on the App Exchange. So I won't go into details here. One thing I wanted to highlight, you might listen to me and say, okay, it's pretty intimidating. Where do I start? I understand the technology, I understand the opportunity, I might have an idea, but where do I start? One thing I was going to say is that, first of all, we provide a lot of those bricks. What you see on this slide, very typical, slides, but look at all those components. When you build a company, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to process orders, manage upgrade, etc., etc. It comes out of the box in the platform. I just wanted to remind you guys, those are the technologies that we are using as a massive tech players, but they're available to you as a founder. So my point is, you can, with a relatively small team, build a solution that you can sell at scale through the App Exchange that I said globally, etc., because you can leverage all those technologies. And sometimes you don't realize that. You just look at Force.com as a great platform, or Heroku as a great platform, but you don't look at all those attributes that go above and beyond the actual stack technology as a developer, etc. Also, we create a lot of content. So again, sometimes too much, I guess, but my team actually built this Sas Founders guide. We ran out of the printed version at Dreamforce, but it's still available online, where we give you a lot of best practices. And more importantly, you have all those components when you sell, you market, you build, etc. We build a lot of content based on the successes of our partners that could actually help you. So the idea is to help you if you have this idea, if for some reason you want to jump in. You're not going to be alone. Yes, there is this community, but there's a lot of content that actually designed for that very specific purpose. Okay. I would finish with this last section very quickly. A few tips based on, again, talking to partners and some of my colleagues. Choose your flavor. If you want to go after an app and building a business or an app, don't necessarily think you can extend the CRM, which is kind of the bread and butter. Yes, you can do that, but you can go after an industry and target any user, or can go after an horizontal. People sometimes forget about it. There is a perception in the marketplace that the App Exchange is full of plugins and things that extend the CRM. Yes, that's definitely a sweet spot and a strength, but we have a lot of different scenarios, and that extends the world of possibilities. Choose the right architecture. For some of you who are MVPs and developers, you might want to do native apps on Force.com and using the latest and greatest and DX that Wade is going to talk about and all those good things. But you can start small. You can start with an API integration. You can start with the connector. You can have just a UI integration. So there are a lot of scenarios to actually get started at some point and have an app out there. It doesn't have to be full native. You can have heterogeneous technologies involved. Plan for security review early. It sounds like a boring slide. Actually, for me, it's the most important one. Because, if you're talking to customers, trust number one value for Salesforce, etc., it's just the story. It's actually true. And just by planning for security review, which is basically kind of the end goal before you get listed on the App Exchange, is something you need to keep in mind. I mean, you can read the slide very quickly, but, it's one of the cheapest way to get a certification from the major tech players to actually, be listed. So think about it early. Think enterprise scale. You have a lot of benefits from the platform, but think about it straight from the beginning. That might be the thing that differentiates you from all the others, that execution point. Basically telling that you've been doing all that testing that makes your application from day one enterprise grade. A lot of B2B companies that I'm talking to, they're struggling with that a lot. Because they're building some great IP, some great technologies, but sometimes they have a hard time just getting in the door because they're not seen as enterprise grade. So again, leverage your unfair advantage, and do all the testing to justify actually that you're ready for enterprise scale. Be lightning ready, you'll hear that from a lot of Salesforce people. It kind of makes sense. You have sessions today, there's one right after by Louise, talking about this. So, it wouldn't be a Salesforce presentation, I guess, without that. But of course, take that into account and actually be proud of that UI. That could be as well a great differentiator, again, coming back to how you differentiate yourself from all your peers or similar companies. That was it, just 5 tips. Again, happy to expand, talk more about any of those things and give you some example from my experience. A lot of links, we'll share those links, again, to get started and to get access to all that data. We have just brand new Trailhead Badges. We went live actually yesterday about on the ISV track on App Exchange. So again, if in one way or the other you've been inspired, check that out, get your badges, and enjoy the promotion today. I heard buy one, get one free. I guess it sounds like this. If you're interested, happy to talk more. We announced a lot of news around startup. We have a massive investment fund that, it's operating in the US, but also in Europe. I have a colleague who is investing in companies here. Of course, you need to hit like specific milestone before you get to talk to us on that front. But again, just to show you that we're putting a lot of fuel in the ecosystem to generate those projects and those apps. The incubator is a great project in San Francisco. We're about to graduate the second batch. So again, if you want to talk more about this, let me know. And I mentioned you can learn more about the App Exchange. My team, my colleagues sitting in the back have a great session. Pascal, Julie, Nicolas. At 11:20 and the French Riviera. And I will finish, so unfortunately someone said that already, but yes, Chuck came from Honolulu. He was actually part of the first batch of the incubator. I think he impressed a lot of our engineering and product team every time he would open his mouth. He's very knowledgeable. I think he is the most certified guy in the world. So he's here, he went through the incubator, he's building a business himself, so you're lucky to have this guy who flew all the way, so please go talk to him, attend his session. And last but not least, Francis, who's actually in the current batch. So he's a French guy, Irish-French actually, who has been living in Mountain View for a long time, and he's building a company called Matkudo. He's going to share with you at 10:40 in the same room the behind the scene, behind the incubator, and how they implemented Einstein and the architecture of their solution. They're already kind of a great machine learning AI company, but they brought like the power of Einstein to the app. So again, we're lucky to have two founders who are great community members and who really embrace the Salesforce Ohana. So come and talk to them, please. Thank you very much.